It's Sep Tandy, and we've talked a lot about color computer and the Tandy 1000, but today I want to talk about something a little bit different, a piece of software I was introduced to by none other than Wonder Woman. If you follow the channel at all, you probably know that I'm a Tandy fan, especially of the Color Computer series. The Color Computer 2 is what I had when I was a kid, it's what I learned to program on, and it has a very close spot to my heart. One of the things I remember from when I was a kid was a series of comic books that Tandy and Radio Shack put out called the TRS-80 Whiz Kids. I've seen some other reviews of these comics online and on other YouTube channels, and as a comic in themselves, they're not too much to talk about. They were basically a promotional piece for Tandy and Tandy products, but for someone who's into the computers, they are absolutely fantastic. These kids talk about everything from network controllers to Model 3s, Model 1s, every Tandy product you can imagine, and they talk about it in a very excited way, which is a lot of fun. Tandy was able to partner up with DC Comics and bring in some other well-known characters to be a part of these, Superman and Wonder Woman. And in this particular issue, there was something brought up that really caught my attention, and I didn't actually grab this until I was reading one of these comic books to my son about a year ago. In one of the comic books, there is reference made to the fact that everything that the kids have learned about the history of technology and things that were going on at the exhibit at whatever museum they were visiting could be experienced using their color computer. This immediately prompted me to say, wait a minute, I don't remember any software for the color computer that was like that. I knew about some of the other educational software, but I'd never heard about this history of technology. This software does in fact exist. There was actually 2 volumes of this, and they were made primarily for schools and educational institutions. It's called the History of Technology series. Back in the 60s, there was a company called Dorset, and Dorset was an educational materials company. They made a lot of different things for the classroom, but their main interest was in making educational film strips. What they did is they would distribute these film strips to schools. It would contain an actual film strip to be projected on some kind of projection screen, as well as usually a record album, and you would run through this film strip and play the record. The record would have narration and talk about each of the different frames on the film, and then there would be a tone in the record audio that would trigger someone in the classroom, usually a lucky child that was selected and was really excited about doing it, to move to the next frame in the film when the tone happened. And it was a good way of learning. Dorset, as the 70s rolled on and going into the 80s and the beginning of the computer era, saw an opportunity to modify what they were doing and make it compatible with a computer system. Tandy was a logical choice for them. The color computer was something that was very accessible and low priced and something that classrooms could afford. And it was the dawn of what is now known as the Talk Tutor series from Dorset Software in partnership with Tandy. They figured out that we can take the same material that was in these film strips and we can convert that into a digital form and make it work with the Tandy color computer. Their biggest challenge was figuring out how do we make that work with actual narration. One of the cool things about the Tandy system and the color computer was that the most common means of loading a program was cassette. That gave you a unique opportunity, because on the cassette you could have actual audio as well as data. They exploited this fact and used some special features to be able to mix and match actual narration audio with data so that images could be shown on your color computer while a professional narration was being done for that particular lesson. This allowed Dorset to immediately come out with a large library of software, some of which we have at the museum. They covered all of your standard topics. Basically anything that they were able to do on a film strip, they were able to translate to this Talk Tutor format. For whatever reason, Radio Shack felt it necessary to promote a very particular one of these lessons in their TRS-80 Whiz Kids comic book, and that was the History of Technology series. In searching for this, I did find an archive.org post that actually had an archive of some WAV files that were transferred from cassettes of someone that worked at Dorset. In trying to get those archive files to work, because I immediately set out to make one of these work on the color computer, I ran into some immediate problems. There was a ton of noise on them and the audio level was very low. So getting the audio to even work, even to hear the narration, was challenging. And then to make the program actually be able to be read by the color computer took a lot of manipulation. I did get the actual program to read with one of the lessons called the electric car. It's not perfect. You can tell that A lot of the bits that are used to actually create the images on screen must be on a bit-by-bit basis, and some of those bits and bytes were corrupted. So actually watching it is a little bit challenging because there are some garbled sections.
Many people believe the electric car is the car of the future.
Images that did not transfer right. Some of the multiple choice questions don't look right. Some of the text doesn't look right. In one of our warehouse picks at the inception of kind of creating the Vintage Geek Museum, I happened to run across, very fortuitously, one binder of the 2-binder set of the History of Technology series. It was probably one of the happiest days in my collecting life to be able to actually find it, and it does have all of the cassettes inside. Along the way, in trying to learn more about the Talk Tutor series, I reached out to a number of different people. One of those names was Jamie Alexander. Jamie actually worked for Tandy at the time and was in charge of putting together these Talk Tutor tapes.
The Talk Tutor system was very interesting because it combined analog audio with the digital graphics of the color computer. So it was a very different system at the time. I really didn't like telling people I was a computer programmer because it really wasn't programming like BASIC or any kind of programming. I mean, it was its own little language, the way it all worked. But now this was 40 years ago, so so this is really stretching the brain cells to remember some of this. What a lot of my time was spent doing was demonstrating this system to publishers. And trying to see if we could get them to adopt it.
Interesting.
And to use, so textbook publishers, to use it to create educational software programs for the color computer.
I see.
So we wanted to get more people creating programs.
With those master tapes, would you take that audio then, and then you had to splice that with all of these sections of computer code? Because I seem to remember it was like a handoff. It would be like, you know, audio and then code and then audio.
Yes, so that's correct. It would be like, I don't remember if I actually spliced it or just would play the reel-to-reel part of it into the mixer that we got from Dorset. And then the computer program, the data would lay down.
So who was the person that was in charge of actually making the code part of it, like the, you know, capturing the graphics?
I would do that.
Okay.
I would do that, yeah. So I had a copy stand with a video camera. And would take pictures of the images with that camera, and then put that into the computer. It was an easy process. It was easy to grab the image, put it in the computer, and grab the audio and put that onto a tape that would then play back. And I mean, I remember saving it to cassette, that we would save it to cassette. I don't think it went back to the reel-to-reel, but it might have. And in that photo of me at the system and looking at the screen, I noticed that the image did not fill the screen. It was small, and then there was a place for text. So so we could clearly put a graphic of some kind and text on the screen. But mostly it was educational applications. And really a lot of it was to impress publishers on what we were doing with technology to get them to create software for the color computer.
Huge thanks to Jamie Alexander for allowing us the access to the materials and talking about the Talk Tutor system. Getting back to our process of actually getting the history of technology to work, we had the archive.org files that we had access to, and we did give it the best try that we could to get those to work before we had the original cassettes. Now with the actual cassettes from the binder, I went ahead and had to do a little bit of surgery on the first tape we brought out because the pad was actually falling off, so put a new pad in the cassette, loaded it in our Plus Deck 2C that we've used for other videos here on the channel, and loaded it into digital form so we could manipulate it with an audio editor. The good news is the audio looked very clean on these new recordings.
Since then, the price of gas has doubled and is still rising.
Especially compared to the audio that we got off of the archive.org tapes, which were basically all noise, or at least a large percentage of the audio was noise.
Besides its high price today, gasoline has other problems.
When it was all said and done, we ended up with a clean copy of the monitor program, which actually starts the process of Talk Tutor, as well as the lesson tape for the electric car. That's the first one that we're going to try, and we're going to do it right here on Vintage Geek. In order to do this setup, I'm using a normal Windows laptop to play the audio files, as well as this external mixer just to give us a little bit better control over the audio that's feeding into the cassette port on the color computer. One unique aspect of the Talk Tutor system is that it used the color computer to actually control the transport of the cassette machine. This was important because at various points in these lessons there are questions that are asked of the user, and the user is giving input that basically prompt the program to move forward. In order to make that work properly, the computer has to stop the cassette to wait for that user input. And in this case, because we're playing it off a laptop, I don't have that capability, so I'm just going to have to stop it at logical points along the way or let it play through. So we're going to give this a shot and see if we can get this original Talk Tutor History of Technology program on the electric car to work today on Vintage Geek. We're going to first have to load the small monitor program from Dorset. This was basically just the instructions that allow the system to know how to handle the audio from the Talk Tutor system. We're going to do cload M for machine language, and we're going to play that file. And it found the program called Monitor, and it's now loading that. It takes about 30 seconds to load the Monitor program, and we've loaded the Monitor program successfully. Things are looking good so far. Now we're going to get that lesson tape ready, and we're going to go ahead and load the program. Radio Shack Talk Tutor Monitor System. To get ready, remove the monitor cassette, insert lesson cassette, press record or play button. Of course, we're going to do this all on the laptop, and then we're going to press any key. And we're going to have to start the audio manually because, again, we don't have tape transport control. I remember the first time that even this screen came up on the original archive cassettes and being excited to see anything come up on the screen, but seeing this come up perfectly is really cool.
In 1975, a gallon of gasoline in the United States cost about 35 cents. Since then, the price of gas has doubled and is still rising. All of the cars and trucks made in the United States need gasoline. Besides its high price today, gasoline has other problems. In the United States, gasoline seems to be in short supply. Also, it pollutes the air. Most people want the auto industry to find and use a better fuel for cars. Many people believe the electric car is the car of the future. In a way, it is also the car of the past. Electric cars have been around since the 1890s. Today, gasoline is very expensive. What other problem is related to the use of gas?
Now, I heard the click on the actual color computer, so I went ahead and stopped the playback of the audio just like it would have stopped the cassette from playing here. It's looking for the user to insert information here and to answer the question. Now, because this is a basic system, the only thing it's really capable of at this point is either moving on or not moving on. So I'm going to try putting in the wrong answer and seeing what happens here. Let's put on nuclear risk. Okay, so it just says no. Now, if you hit a key, it goes back to the question. And then if we go and hit the correct answer, which would be air pollution, it's going to move on, which would then start the tape again.
Today, gasoline is very expensive.
$1.39.
The first car ever made was not electric. It ran on steam. A Frenchman, Nicolas Cugnot, invented it in 1769. This car was 20 feet long, and in some places it was 8 feet tall.
Seems like a fairly large car.
Cugnot's car had a top speed of 2 1/4 miles per hour.
Setting some speed records there.
Some people claim that Cugnot also had the first automobile accident in history. One day, while driving his car, he crashed into a wall.
Nice sound effect there.
In the 1860s, steam-powered cars like Cugnot's might have been successful in England, but they weren't. They were just too big and heavy for the stagecoach roads. Also, they smoked and were very noisy.
Much like their neighbors.
Sometimes, steam cars would even explode, so England passed the red flag law. This law did not allow steam cars to travel any faster than 3 miles per hour.
That's a pretty restrictive speed limit right there.
Also, a man carrying a red flag had to walk in front of the cars. In 1896, the first American automobile track race was held. The winner of the race was a Stanhope Electric made by Riker. It averaged 26.8 miles per hour. This was not a very exciting race. Spectators were said to have yelled, "Get a horse." Nevertheless, in 1899, an electric car ran 65.8 miles per hour. This first car to go a mile a minute was driven by Camille Janazzi in Paris.
That name's real unfortunate.
The first American track car race was said to have been dull. What did some of the spectators yell?
Get a horse.
Electric cars were in the United States before the race in 1896. But in the 1924 National Automobile Show, there were no electric cars.
Bum, bum, bum.
The early electric models could not go much faster than 25 miles per hour, and after they went 75 miles, their batteries needed to be recharged. Recharging the battery was another major problem. It took about 12 hours. On the other hand, the gasoline cars could go at least 100 miles before they needed more fuel.
Oh, I like what they did with the animation there.
And it took only a few minutes to stop and refill the gas tank. The electric car just could not compete with that. How far could the car go on a single charge?
75 miles.
In the past, Americans have used electric cars only for golf carts, messenger cars, and forklifts. But now people are worried about a fuel shortage and air pollution. So there's a new interest in electric cars. Most of the problems with electric cars could have been solved years ago, but the company stopped working on them. How long will it be before electric cars can compete with gasoline cars? Experts say it will be a while yet. Until the major problems are solved, the electric car is still the car with the past and a car of the future.
Hey, 17 correct answers. Well, I have to say that the experience actually getting to play the real cassette of this in its original form was really a treat. It's a pretty cool little system that Dorset came up with here. I really liked the fact that they were getting creative with using audio on the cassette itself, going back and forth between the audio on the tape and the actual code for the software. They even had some animations there with the graphics and so forth. Now, some of the advertised features in the comic book are not true. They actually said in the comic book strip that you would be able to experience these lessons in color, but as you saw, they're just the monochrome green and black background. But still, it's a pretty cool piece of software, and I'm sure that they put a lot of work into it. I know that Jamie put a lot of work into setting up the tapes and everything, and it was cool to learn about that process as well. I do want to mention really quick that this is only one binder that we have of the two-part series on the history of technology, and there are some of the tapes that are on archive.org that we don't have the original cassettes of. It's going to be one of our goals to try to figure out between having these originals and having the archived files that maybe we can piece together those tapes and make them into something usable. Better yet, maybe somebody out there actually has the original binder for the second part in the series. If you do, please contact us via the channel. We are very interested in getting these materials to archive them, as we're not sure if they exist anywhere else. We'd like to preserve these for future generations to come. Really appreciate you taking the time to go through this journey with us here on Vintage Geek. I do encourage you, if you like vintage computing, if you like what we're talking about here, please like and subscribe. It's going to help us a lot as we grow and we grow the museum. We also have some great merch. If you want to check it out, we've got different t-shirts like the one I'm wearing today. We've got coffee cups and other accessories as well, so be sure to check that out. That's it for now. I'm Aaron, and this has been Vintage Geek.